Introduce the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioners. Good morning. Brendan Finn, Chief of Staff to Portland City Commissioner Dan Saltzman. Thank you for taking a brief moment before you conduct the city's business to allow me to introduce Owen Keegan, who is the Chief Executive to the City Council of Dublin, Ireland. We have a mutually beneficial relationship with Dublin. They're a part of a network of cities that share strategies and best practices around transportation and mobility. We're very thankful for that mutually beneficial relationship that we have, and thankful to have Owen here in Portland to learn more about what we're doing and learn more about what they're doing in Dublin, one of the fastest growing cities in the EU. So they're facing many of the same challenges that Portland is. Owen.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Mayor, Commissioners, it's great to be here from the City of Dublin. As Brendan says, we've had a kind of a mutual learning relationship with the City here, and it's good to have an opportunity to come over again and just see some of the wonderful things that are happening here, bring them back home and apply them, give you credit, I hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. We sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just say something quickly? So Brendan's already told you, we sit up here, but Brendan actually runs the show. So he's told you that. My dad, when he got his first job, he had an entry-level job in the State Department, and he was assigned to Dublin. And I guess he was charged, he did like processing passports and things like that. But my sister was born in Dublin. So we have a little bit of family history there, and had a chance to visit a couple of times. It's just beautiful.
There, my daughter lives here now, so I have 2 reasons to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. It's great to have you here, sir. Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. This is the Wednesday, March 28th morning session of the Portland City Council. Carla, hello. Could you please call the roll?
Hello. Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaley. Wheeler.
Here.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so that everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in City Council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the Council Clerk's Office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on, and when your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up, and if you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you very much. First communications item, please.
Item 292, request of Brad Perkins to address council regarding Sullivan's Gulch Trail funding.
Good morning.
Well, good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. You got okay sign with your wife last night?
I did indeed.
Okay,
I
good.
did indeed. That was a great event, and I
Okay.
appreciated your testimony last night. It was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I come here representing Sullivan Gulch Trail Committee. I also come here as an individual. I just want to mention a couple things. Next week, the county will be re-evaluating the Wapato. And I just want Mayor Ted Wheeler and the rest to reconsider joint venture with Multnomah County and looking at this as a service center. That's 150,000 square feet of building and 18 acres of property that could house inside and outside over 1,000 people. So I just want to keep that in mind. And also, I'm CEO of Cascadia High Speed Rail. I don't know if you heard, but state of Washington, through Governor Inslee, and also the premier up in British Columbia, has approved $1.5 million for a further study for high-speed rail, and Portland's included. Yeah. So we need to get going to be planning as to how we can connect with what is already being done as far as studies. This will be further discussion, and I hope to be a part of it. So great. The other thing, Sullivan's Gulch Trail. Just 2012, and a few of you have been part of the city council that approved this Sullivan's Gulch Trail. It looks like we have been pushed aside, put it mildly, in favor of the Green Loop. Green Loop is very hypothetical at this point. We've, representing 15 different neighborhoods and 3 business organizations, and other developers, they're very interested in seeing this thing happen. And there's a great opportunity now with the bridge being planned across I-84. The main piece that really needs to be connected here is underneath MLK and Grand Avenue for a safe connection through a major corridor issue. It's a failed intersection there at MLK and Lloyd Boulevard especially. So I want you to be able to keep an eye on that very closely, because we're trying to get the first leg started so we can get private money to continue getting money for this trail. The other thing is that land nearby the trail can be used, that is city-owned, that can be used privately if the city thinks outside the box and says, okay, if you want to participate, here's a way to do that. I would really appreciate, Commissioner Saltzman, if we can meet and discuss this more in detail. Since we have been working with the project manager on that, it's been my way or the highway. So we need to get a stakeholder group together for that major project. $12.5 million being spent on it. When we were discussing or planning for the trail, it was $450,000. Or excuse me, $250,000. And we had a stakeholder group that was involved with that. I just want to encourage the council to take a look at having that happen, and maybe a project manager involved with the Sullivan's Gulch Trail too. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir, for being here. We appreciate it. And the next two, if you could read them together, I believe they'd like to come up together.
The next three, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're correct. Thank you, Carla.
Sure. 293, request of Andrew McGow to address council regarding Economic Opportunity Program and housing assistance. 294, request of Stacy Triplett to address council regarding Economic Opportunity Program and housing assistance. And 295, request of Patrick Gearing to address council regarding city rent assistance.
And colleagues, I had received prior notice that there would be different individuals coming up in place of the names that have been called. So that has been prearranged, and I'm sorry I didn't find my talking points in time. But thank you, all three of you, for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and members of the City Council. I'm Stacy Triplett here with Work Systems. We're bringing a snapshot of the Economic Opportunity Program to you today. For the last 6 years, Prosper Portland and Work Systems, your Workforce Development Board, have been collaborating on this program. The program goal is simply to support entry into high-growth career track occupations for low-income residents of the City of Portland. You see the details of the program there. I'll highlight a couple of things. We've been able to serve 54% people of color in the last year. 89% of the folks we've served are very low income, between 0 and 30% of median family income, and 22% self-report that they're homeless at entry. So we're very relevant to the issues of Portland today. I'd like to focus here on how Work Systems increases your anchor investment with over $6 million of additional federal, state, and local sources that we bring annually to serve more people and enhance services in this program. This could not be brought to our community without the stable funding you provide. The increases have included additional career coaches to serve more participants. This program is based on an individualized one-on-one model of career coaching that's very important to career planning and goals for the participants. The additional funding is training scholarships that are tied to the public workforce system, bringing that coordination. And on-the-job training and paid internships are funded as well. This program serves both adults and youth. Here you'll recognize some of the most well-known community-serving organizations. They have different strengths and different focus populations. They're a robust network, and they're able to align with others to address needs that customers bring, like rent assistance, childcare, transportation, other supports that reduce barriers to employment and to training. Their customers access over $500,000 in rent assistance at this time. Meyer Memorial Trust has funded a housing systems alignment pilot that we have results from for last year. That pilot last year showed that a comparison group of customers that did not receive rent assistance because the level of need exceeds the funding compared to those who did receive rent assistance showed that those that did receive it had better training completions, better employment outcomes with the rent assistance support. EOP rent assistance recipients increased their income almost double compared to that comparison group in that study. Another EOP project that Meyer Memorial Trust has funded is participation of culturally specific providers in a reimbursement grant that's offered by the USDA for serving SNAP recipients particularly. Add to the list that you see there El Programa Hispano Católico and Urban League in the program expansion that addresses housing insecure folks and aligns with housing initiatives from Home for Everyone. So I hear my time is over. Melinda and Renee are here, EOP customers, to communicate directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Melinda Harwood. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to start by saying if it wasn't for Human Solutions, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. I spent 17 years in addiction. I was homeless for a good 10 years of that. And so when I came out of jail last time, I was introduced to Human Solutions through the GCJ program. I just had my baby, my first baby, and they had got me into the WEX program so I could start work because I had no history of work. And so we did an internship, it's a 240-hour internship through the WEX program and through Habitat for Humanity. And after my 240 hours, I was able to get full-time employment with them. That was about 2 years ago. I'm now a floor supervisor there, and I'm about ready to have my second baby. And and then also, I have a place to live now. I have a place for my family to be, and I wouldn't have had that as well without them. I have a really bad criminal background, and that was a huge barrier for me. And I also had property debt, past property debt as well. So with the help of Human Solutions and my housing specialist, they were able to get me a reasonable accommodation letters that kind of outlines my addiction and my mental health, how that goes hand in hand with all my criminal behavior. They also helped pay off my property debt, which was a huge barrier for me. I couldn't have afforded that without them. And now I'm in a stable house, and I have a place for my family, and I can continue to grow right now. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And by the way, you've noted two barriers that many people in our community still face. One is, in the old days, having to disclose that you had a criminal justice past. We passed a law here that banned the box, because we think when people do their time, that they should not have that just sort of follow them forever. Yeah. And of course, the other has to do with people that have, an event in their life that causes their credit rating to be damaged. And everybody has some bump in the road. Yeah. But once your credit rating is damaged, that affects your ability to rent, to buy, to get credit. So those are still two significant barriers which disproportionately affect people who are either of modest means or have had a bump in the road. And I think we have to continue to fight to make sure that that doesn't prevent people from re-engaging in society and chasing their dreams. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning. My name's Renee Elias, and just my story's a little bit different. However, I always wanted to be in the medical field, and I went and I got my CNA 1 license, and I had been working at the same place for about 4 years, and I was lost a job, and but was living in an apartment for about 4 years, and I had an eviction notice, I had a PGE shut off, had no job. I went to WorkSource, and I just kept looking for a job, and I wanted to go back to school to further my career, didn't have the income for it, and WorkSource had turned me over to Human Solutions, and that's when I met my counselor, Shauna, and it seems like right when I started the Human Solutions, they supported me. I was able to get my CNA 2 license. They paid for my school. They paid 90% of my rent. They helped me keep my PGE bill going. I graduated with my CNA 2 license, fully paid. My income, after I graduated with my CNA 2, I got a job at a hospital, and my income has doubled. I have medical. I was able to keep my apartment. I got all my bills paid off, and I still had Human Solutions helping me probably, I'd say, 2 months after I had gotten my CNA 2 license. They didn't say, okay, well, we're done. You have a job now. They supported me. They kind of weaned me off it financially. All I can say is, my life has changed. It's a great program, and I feel like they supported me. They gave me my education that I needed, and I just hope that everybody gets the same experience that I got to experience with them. I think it's very important.
Thank you. Commissioner Fritz?
Well, being in healthcare is inherently a service job, and being a CNA is a very difficult one of those. So thank you for what you're already giving back to society for what we've helped you with. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, all three of you, for being here. And Melinda and Stacy, I'm very sorry I had to leave, but you have my word. I will actually review and watch the video. I'm apologizing that I had to take a moment, but thank you, all three of you, for being here today. It's powerful testimony. Last individual, please.
Item 296, request of Brian Quinn to address council regarding sidewalk stamps.
Is Mr. Quinn here today? I do not see him today. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, we have item 300 and 302.
300 and 302, please call the roll on the remainder.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. Item 297, please.
Direct the Chief Administrative Officer and the Directors of the City Budget Office, Bureau of Transportation, and Portland Parks and Recreation to proceed with 7 Build Portland priority projects.
Colleagues, Build Portland is the means by which the city plans to address our infrastructure gap, which represents a significant long-term liability in Portland, as you're well aware. The gap is large. Staff charged with managing our infrastructure raised the alarm that $228 million more is needed each year for the next 10 years just to maintain the infrastructure that we have today. This gap has increased by tens of millions over the last 2 years because the costs increase as the conditions deteriorate. Fortunately, several urban renewal areas will expire over the next 10 years, returning tax increment finance to the city. The city has the opportunity to use a portion of this funding to address deferred maintenance. But having money isn't enough. We need a bigger multi-year vision. So, in the last year's proposed budget, I announced an infrastructure plan called Build Portland to commit at least $600 million of city resources by 2040 to make critical investments in our core infrastructure. The Portland Building Advisory Committee was directed to bring, by March 2018, a recommendation regarding a list of priority projects, a funding plan, and a timeline for council consideration. Deputy Chief Administrative Officer Carmen Merlo is here to do that. The first of the 2 time-certain ordinances we're about to take up describes the Build Portland selection process and decision. The second authorizes the limited tax revenue bonds to provide interim financing for these important projects. I would also like you to read 298, please.
Authorize limited tax revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $52 million to finance infrastructure improvements in city parks, transportation, civic, and other capital assets as contemplated in the city's Build Portland Infrastructure Initiative.
Very good. Carmen and Jennifer, welcome, and take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, Carmen Merlo, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. With me is Jennifer Cooperman, Chief Financial Officer. And also behind me I have Directors Scott Abate and I believe Leah Treat, also available to answer any questions. Last October, City Council approved a resolution directing the CAO to continue implementation of the Build Portland initiative, and specifically it directed the CAO to form a Build Portland Advisory Committee no later than November 2017, whose role would be to develop eligibility criteria of funded projects and to come back to Council by March of 2018 with a prioritized list of projects and a funding plan. In addition, it also required the CAO to produce an annual update to Council on the progress of implementing the Build Portland initiative and to respond to issues raised by the former Chief Financial Officer, Ken Rust, and you'll be hearing a little bit more from CFO Jennifer Cooperman a little bit later. So there are 3 groups that have helped to guide and inform the Build Portland process, starting with the Advisory Committee. This is made up of the CAO as the chair, the Chief Financial Officer, the directors of PBOT, Parks, City Budget Office, the asset managers, as well as several community advisors. And this committee met in November and in February of this year. The second committee that has been meeting monthly is the City Asset Managers Group, and their charge is to propose and evaluate the projects using the eligibility criteria that the Advisory Committee came up with. And then finally, a finance group that's led by Jennifer, as well as the debt manager and CBO, to develop a funding plan and timeline for implementation. So the Advisory Committee developed a 2-step approach that projects must go through to be eligible for Build Portland funding. It primarily relies on a process previously adopted by the city as an effective way to allocate resources to the highest need projects, but it front loads eligibility criteria with priorities identified by council, city bureaus, the asset managers, and Build Portland stakeholders. It then moves into a phase 2, which uses the existing capital set-aside scoring criteria. So starting with the first step, the proposers go through a series of yes/no questions to find out whether projects maximize return on investment and reduce the city's major maintenance gap, whether the project invests in assets that are critical for delivering core services, whether there's reliable data to evaluate the asset condition, determining whether the project scores high on equity considerations, and making sure the projects comply with financing requirements of city financial policies. All the projects that answered yes to those questions were moved on to phase 2. Again, this is using the existing capital set-aside criteria, which is primarily a risk and likelihood framework. So in total, 25 projects were submitted by Parks, PBOT, and our civic infrastructure. Of those projects, 20 made it to phase 2. And then finally, the highest scoring projects, the top 7, were the ones identified for Build Portland funding. So you have the list of projects here. And again, I have the Director Abate and Treat here to answer any questions for you on these projects. I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer Cooperman to talk to you more about the funding plan.
So now that the projects have been identified, we will be looking to the bureaus responsible for these projects to submit spending schedules to the debt management group. And once we have those spending schedules and a level of certainty for the spend, we can come up with the appropriate way to finance. It will either be lines of credit if the construction period will be extended over a period of time, or direct issuance of long-term bonds up front if the spending certainty is relatively high. We will need a 3 to 6 month planning period prior to issuance of the financing mechanism, but that's the traditional approach that we take when bureaus come to the debt management group for any sort of financing.
Jennifer, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
One question that gets posed to me a lot about this program, people say, okay, great, I like the fact that you're being fiscally disciplined and you're finding resources to invest in infrastructure, but what about the debt? Are you concerned about the issuance of debt?
I'm concerned that we are issuing the debt prior to the return of the funds that the debt is being financed with. There is some risk to the city of our doing that, which is why in my memo the recommendation was that we intentionally take a phased approach to this. I am sensitive to and supportive of the aspirational goals of $600 million over a long period of time, but I think it would be irresponsible to commit today to that full $600 million.
And that's why we're spreading this over a 20-year period, so we can manage that risk.
Yes. And that why today we are presenting ordinances to you, a financing ordinance that looks just at the first 50 and just at the first 7 projects. And the best way to manage expectations internally and externally will be to show success with this first phase, and then revisit the returning revenues to the general fund, revisit other needs that may have come before council in that meantime, other legacy liabilities that the city has, and make another determination at the advisory committee and with council about what the best use is for those funds at that time.
And Jennifer, what is the best way, or what strategies can we use to protect the credit rating? As we issue these bonds, obviously we'll be concerned with the credit rating. What strategies are we using to protect the credit rating?
I'm going to invite Eric Johansson, debt manager, up to participate in the response to that. I'd say that the messaging that we are giving to the marketplace and to the credit agencies, that we are taking a very intentional, slow approach with this, and that, quite frankly, we have these infrastructure needs today. We've had them for a very long period of time. They're no less today than they were before, and that the costs only increase if we wait to address the issue. So we're balancing the debt costs versus the additional infrastructure costs by waiting.
Great. And sorry, I couldn't resist letting my former job bleed into this one a little bit.
Yeah,
I would just add that we have conversations with the rating agencies on an ongoing basis. They're well aware of our debt policies that restrict the amount of limited tax bonds that we can issue, both those that are self-supporting and those that are not self-supporting. So fortunately, right now, we have a fair amount of cushion under those policies. You could see a situation where there's a lot of, between Build Portland and a lot of the legacy liabilities, we may start to test those. So again, we'll make sure that we're having those ongoing conversations with the rating agencies and updating them on where we stand with respect to our policies.
Very good. And because of this incremental approach, if we ever got to the point, and I want to be clear, we're not there and we don't foresee getting there, but should changes take place in the marketplace and we see ourselves getting there with this incremental approach, we obviously have the ability to put on the brakes if necessary.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
And as there are discussions about changes made to the URAs, we will also be reminding people about what promises have been made based on certain assumptions and what the impact might be of changes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Jennifer, I have a couple of questions. Which bureaus are eligible to compete for Build Portland projects?
The way the original resolution was written, it would be PBOT, Parks, the civic assets.
That's it.
That's it.
So if the council wanted to expand to another bureau, we would have to amend the original ordinance? Or is that just how it's been interpreted?
It was a resolution that, that is the framework for the Build Portland program, so we would want to revisit the resolution.
So I've raised this with the mayor, and I'll discuss it with my colleagues at a later time, but when we come back to the discussion about unreinforced masonry buildings, we do have a number of buildings that the city is a prime investor in, not the owner-operator, but a prime investor. And as I'm looking, and they are at risk of serious damage if in the event of a seismic event. And as I look at the criteria, it seems to me they would actually fit within a number of these. If they were evaluated based on these criteria, they would fit. The question is, does the council believe that that qualifies as the kind of infrastructure that was contemplated with Build Portland? The truth is that there's going to be $20+ million of upgrades needed in projects that we fund where the nonprofit owner-operator doesn't have the resources to upgrade the building. And it seems to me, my initial view is that it fits within the criteria, but it obviously has to be a council decision.
And the challenge for nonprofit owners will be the state constitutional limit against the lending of credit and our ability to use our monies to help finance non-city owners, private owners of those properties. There was the constitutional amendment.
It will be on the November ballot.
It will be on the November ballot for voters to opine on the ability for jurisdictions to issue general obligation bonds in those situations.
I see. So it's the color of money. It's the bond proceeds. We go back to the problem we have under the Constitution.
Right. So it may be, we'll have to look differently at the properties that the city directly owns versus ones that we do not own. And there are different funding streams that we can take into account to reflect the color of money.
If we use the money to provide a revolving loan fund at a low interest rate, would that get around the constitutional prohibition?
Not being bond counsel,
Right,
I always defer to bond counsel. My understanding is that it would not.
Okay.
Right.
And my second question is, the second biggest chunk that we're going to approve today is ADA accessible sidewalks. Is that a down payment on the most recent lawsuit that was resolved, or is this part of the Bureau's forecasted work that needs to be done?
My understanding is that that was part of the normal forecast of the Bureau and that the settlement arrangement was not contemplated as part of this, but I would want to defer to Director Treat.
Good morning.
Good morning. The $2 million annually out of this is to replace the ULF funding that was taken to fund Build Portland, so it's part of our regular work program for ADA ramps.
So it's independent of the lawsuit?
Completely separate.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, Director Treat.
Sorry.
That's okay. I actually didn't see that in the presentation about that $2 million. My question is about the Lents Town Centre improvements, $10.5 million. All the others seem very clearly to be retrofits and fixing stuff that's been built and is broken. That sounds more like an improvement than fixing what's broken. Tell me about that.
I'm so sorry. Give me just one quick second. I left my notes. My apologies.
And I apologize for not asking the question ahead of time. I just noticed it.
So the Lents Town Center project actually will include paving on Foster, on Woodstock, and we'll do signal upgrades and sidewalk improvements, pedestrian crossings, and bikeways. So both the pavement and the signals are 20 years beyond their useful life, so it's a significant infrastructure upgrade.
And may as well do the rest while we're at it.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Does that complete your presentation?
Yeah.
Very good.
No.
No, it does not.
But we'll
Okay.
get more.
That's not all you get.
So last but not least, this last slide is the information that we will be requesting from the bureaus who have projects that will be approved. This is normal information that we would look for when issuing financing to support capital improvements in the city. So just for your benefit, this is the sort of information that we will be requiring. That's the end of the presentation.
And you have to respond to that memos.
Well, I already did. So I submitted to your offices separately a written response to the concerns that prior CFO Ken Rust entered into the record last fall regarding this program. I'm happy to review the memo for you, but the bottom line is that there is risk associated with issuing the debt prior to the return of the funds to the general fund. I think it's manageable. And again, I would certainly hope that we are taking this intentional phased approach and issue $50 million plus issuance costs for these initial projects, and then have successful projects, and then revisit where we are at the conclusion of those projects for the next phase.
And I'd just add to that that the risk is known of not doing anything.
It is, but I want to be very mindful of the debt burden that we are placing on the city, and reinforce that as we look to adjust URAs. This financing plan is built on certain assumptions, and as we tinker with those assumptions, we want to investigate what the implications of those changes are, and we will bring those back to you.
Excellent.
Yeah, I have every confidence that you will keep us informed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a public testimony on either of these items?
We have 2 people signed up,
Very good.
Philip Sellinger and Shedrick J. Wilkins.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Phil Sellinger. I'm here today representing the Northwest District Association Board and Transportation Committee. That is the neighborhood association for the northwest part of the city. And I'm here to solicit your support for the reconstruction of Northwest 23rd Avenue north of Lovejoy Street, which has been a priority of both the city and the neighborhood for a long time. As you know, Northwest 23rd Avenue is a designated main street serving the Northwest Town Center. This is a high-density, mixed-use growth area. We're seeing rising truck and automobile traffic. It's used by TriMet frequent bus service and emergency vehicles accessing Legacy Good Samaritan Hospital. The street is failing, and it's failing quite quickly. It's been on at least our priority list and the city's list for quite some time, keeps getting deferred. It's been patched, but the underlying structure is failing. The south end of the street has been reconstructed under an earlier program up to Lovejoy Street, but the north end is a mess. It's hazardous for pedestrians, for people with mobility devices, and I might also mention that 1 in 4 of the residents of this area live in poverty, according to the last U.S. Census. So we're disappointed to see that it didn't make this first round under Build Portland, but we think it needs to be funded either in the next round or with a capital set-aside program. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just go on record saying I agree with you, and sooner rather than later would be better.
Exactly.
Thank you for being here. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Justice Watchdog. Again, Mayor, I commend you on this, the $600 million that you've put out there and are trying to do, and we'll see where it goes. Now, pertaining to the bonds, it's my understanding that that would require a vote by the public. Now, if I'm incorrect on that, they can state that to me. Now, also, some of the concerns I have on the bond is that I'm always a little bit concerned on doing the interest only up front and not buying down the principal. So I have a little bit of a concern on that till the URAs kick in a few years later. So I understand you're being a little bit cautious on the overall debt, but I always have a problem with just paying interest only and not taking down the principal. So that is a concern to me just from my position. Also, you know, when I always bring up the number on the current assets of about $35 billion, I always have a problem on acquiring assets but not having the maintenance plan in place to make sure our infrastructure doesn't become deferred and we have to come back with this type of money. And one of the reasons why I say that is that at this time we are in a market that is as good as I think it's going to get as far as real estate values. And I've always, even at the Historical Society, when you were trying to become the mayor, I said to you directly, I said, why don't we look at doing something on the overall assets and maybe trim a little bit off the top? And the reason why I said that is that I think it's the right time to look at that. If we do sale leasebacks on certain properties with long-term leases that we can renew from the city and just have money sitting there that we can utilize in infrastructure, but we don't actually give up the properties themselves on a long-term basis. There's a lot of areas to look at on maybe giving them a reasonable return, but being able to take our equity and utilize it back into the infrastructure, and that way we don't get too over leveraged on the debt. And I, as a state treasurer, you know the direction I'm going on this. Maybe it's an opportune time to look at that. And again, because paying down just interest only is a concern to me. I don't like to pay interest only on anything. I want the principal to be bought down. So other than that, I think everything else looks good here. And again, I commend you on your efforts on this and the $600 million. I commend you on this, and I think it will be successful. And keep moving forward on it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And just so you know that your participation in that event wasn't for naught. I remember you sitting off on the left-hand side and having that conversation with you. When we go through some of these major redevelopments that are before the city, like the Broadway corridor, that strategy is very much on the table.
Okay.
So I just want you to know that there has been a lot of thinking about that. And in terms of the interest only, as a principle, I agree with you. In this case, in terms of prudent management of the debt, I think it's the right near-term strategy. Yes. But I want you to know that over the long term, I agree with you.
And if I might add something real fast, I'm only talking a small percentage off the top of the capital assets, which I think due to the market increase in the last few years would be beneficial to maybe do that. And also that takes away from our maintenance responsibilities on some of those properties and transfers it to the investment group.
That's right.
And thank you for your time.
Spot on. Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm Shedrick Wilkins, and on the issue of city parks, I want our parks to be maintained, but I have a different version of what a city park is. I think the stock market is crashing, and I do support people sleeping in parks. And so they can get out of the rain. It'll take years for the government to respond. I do think positive memories of Occupied Portland, which is a park out here. They did try to feed people. They tried to get outreach for homeless people. They just got a bad bunch of people that went up and busted out bank buildings. But we need to use parks, okay? I'm also picking up word that any kind of ideas like a Terminal 1 shelter or the foster shelter is running into complications from the neighborhood. But remember this, don't blame people for camping in parks, blame the stock market.
Thank you. Thanks all three of you for your testimony. So we will do this in two parts. First of all, does anybody have any further questions of staff? So let's call the roll on the resolution, please. That's number 297.
Fritz?
Well, thank you, Mayor, for leading this effort. When Portlanders have been paying taxes into urban renewal districts to get growth coming for decades, and now it's time for some of that return to go back into the things that Portlanders expect, which is paying for the existing infrastructure and making sure that everybody has decent city services. And that's what this program does. I very much support setting aside part of the so-called boomerang funds that are coming back into the general fund. I think we need to be very intentional on what we do with the rest of them. I'm pleased to see many of the transportation improvements. Obviously, that's got the biggest gap in service, despite the gas tax. We're still got a lot of needs to fix our roads, fix our streets, and so I'm pleased to see those. I am also happy to see a complete renovation of the Mount Scott Community Centre on the list of improvements. The roof is failing, the central heating and cooling is failing, the building is not seismically upgraded, and so in the event of a big earthquake or other natural disaster, it's not safe. And so this is going to give it the facelift, well, not just the facelift, the complete renovation that it deserves. Thanks to Director Michael Barté and his team, Chris Silke and others for their work putting this together and participating. You would think that the Bureau directors would have been gung-ho to get fighting for the money for their particular assets, and certainly they advocate for that. Thanks to the City Budget Office and the City Treasurer and City Chief Financial Officer and others. It's been a process where it's been very intentionally looked at what are the worst, the most urgent, and the biggest bang for the buck, including what are the equity considerations. And so while I hear the gentleman from Northwest District Association that there are a lot of other projects needing doing, we know it's $500 million. $500 million worth of projects that need doing. And this process was designed to look at things objectively and try to fix the things that are most urgently needed, recognizing that even with this program, we're not done, and that we need to, within the bureaus, within the city, intentionally look at what are we spending the taxpayers' money on, are we spending it wisely, and how can we invest it so that we maintain what we have, as well as providing things for places that don't have them. So thank you very much, everybody, for the work that you're doing on this. Aye.
Fish.
Well, Mayor Wheeler, thank you for leading this effort. This is a big lift, and it's a big idea, and I'm proud to support today's initial allocation. I want to thank Jennifer Cooperman and team for providing a cautious framework for our next steps. And that's important because this council cannot bind future councils. We are borrowing against future revenue, and we don't know what the economy is going to look like a week from now, a month from now, or whenever. So I appreciate the caution, and it's one of the reasons why I strongly support the idea of a phased approach. Because a phased approach allows us to sort of make an investment and then pause and assess where we are and make sure we're on the right track. But this would not be happening without the mayor's leadership, and so I'm grateful for that, and I'm pleased to support this effort. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I do want to thank Mayor Wheeler for his leadership on this, and also for the team that's helped get these projects going. And I appreciate the notes of caution also. Aye.
Wheeler?
So I'd like to thank the team that made this happen. I appreciate the thanks, but there were others who did the lion's share of the work on this. The CFO, the treasurer, the city budget office put a tremendous amount of work into this. All of the bureau directors were asked to jump through quite a lot of hoops to help prioritize these projects. So while I appreciate the thanks, really they did all the hard work to help make this a reality, and I think it's a great start. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. With regard to 298, the authorization of limited tax revenue bonds, this is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. Colleagues, item number 298/1 was actually noticed, and it was on the original agenda. Unfortunately, it fell off of our agendas, and so that's why you don't see it on your printed agenda, but it has been properly noticed, and we have a lot of people here today. Could you please read, Carla, 298/1?
Proclaim May 5th, 2018 to be Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Native Women and Girls.
Colleagues, Native women are murdered or go missing at a higher rate than other ethnic groups. The current state of violence against Native women and girls stems from a long legacy of genocide, removal, termination, and unprepared law enforcement and legal systems. This reality is staggering, and it requires acknowledgement. In addition to the presentation and proclamation today, we're also seeking support for a congressional resolution from our Oregon delegation to designate May 5th, 2018 as the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Native Women and Girls. I urge City of Portland employees and residents to increase their awareness about this very important and urgent issue. Here today to present, starting off, is Laura John, our tribal liaison. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to be sitting here in front of you and inviting community to come for this very important proclamation. I have two guest speakers that I've invited today to talk on this issue. We have Representative Tana Sanchez from our Oregon legislature, and we have Deborah Maytubi Shipman, who is the director of the Murdered and Missing Women, Indigenous Women USA site.
Thank you for being here.
Honorable Mayor and distinguished commissioners, my name is Deborah Maytubi Shipman, and I'm from the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma, but I was raised here in Oregon. And I belong to the Wildcat Clan, and that holds a lot of responsibility within my tribe. I'm the founder and chief officer of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women USA. We are based out of Portland, and we started a couple of years ago, and we've really had a lot of support from the community. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women is a national epidemic that we have. We estimate over 9,000 women are missing right now. It just keeps growing bigger. And this problem has come to our city. And in the last 3 weeks, well, to begin with, this could not have happened at a more perfect time, because in the last 3 weeks, we've had 2 missing women, Native women here in Portland. And I'm happy to say that one of them has been found, but the other one that's out there, with her family's permission, her name is Val Kay, and she is out of Montana. And we have heard from her several times, but she sounds, her family says there's something wrong. The police can't file a police report because they've heard from her. So Val is kind of falling through the cracks. And we're gonna look for ourselves on foot and pass out flyers and our phone number so we can try to get her off. And we have a whole, we have got a whole continuity of how we're going to care for her after we find her, and we're going to continue doing that with the missing women in Portland. And yeah, we want to have it like continuous so no one falls through. And I cannot give you firm numbers on how many missing women, Native women, that Portland has had, because frankly, the Oregon State database is incomplete. And the national crime figures do not include missing natives or murdered natives. The crime figures, we are the only race that is left off of national crime figures. Now, you will see a couple reports on the crime and the violence against women by the Department of Justice, but you will not see firm numbers for anything. And that's what we're doing too, is creating the database. We're doing that at MMIW USA. And it's a big job, but it has to be done. They're not doing it. And we hope that Oregon follows Washington State and activates a bill similar to HB 2951 that requires a database to be made and to be maintained by the state on all Indigenous people, both men and women. Lastly, we want you to know how grateful we are for this proclamation. Our city, you know, as you know, our city's a hub for trafficking. We've got I-5, we've got the Port of Portland, we've got an international airport. So you guys stepping up and being vigilant and rising up to the occasion by spreading this awareness is what we need as a people. You're telling us that we matter. You're telling us that our lives are valued. With everything that has been said today, I think you might understand how much that means to us, because we've been ignored. But you're leading the pack, Portland, and we will forever be grateful you answered this call.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. For the record, Tana Sanchez, State Representative, House District 43, and the Director of Family Services at the Native American Youth and Family Center, of which we have the Healing Circle program, which is the very first culturally specific Native American domestic violence program in this region. That program has been very, very important for the last almost 18 years now, because it's provided services for women who have suffered domestic violence, sexual assault, and abuse throughout this city and this region, and as a matter of fact, people coming from all over the country to receive services from our program. That program exists because of what we know is an inequity in services available to Indigenous women. We know that Portland was a secondary relocation site, which means we have 40,000 plus Native people in this community. And as was mentioned, we have, obviously trafficking going on in this area, but we know that sex trafficking and violence against women is something that happens all over. We know it's very prominent off of reservations. We have 9 federally recognized tribes in this state. We know that that is a significant issue. We also know that not a lot is being done. We know that data is not clear. It's not as great as it could be. We know that Department of Justice data is limited to what actually gets prosecuted in some places. So we know the numbers are probably much greater, as we've always known in terms of domestic violence issues here in this city. We believe truly that this proclamation will help. It will help to move things forward. My intention, of course, is to submit legislative concepts that's similar to Washington State to make an effort for us to do some greater research, to put some additional resources towards that. The fact of the matter is we have so many people in our communities that fall victim to trafficking or fall victim to violence in some way and are lost and simply never found again. And it's just a horrible thing that's happening. And because, we know that obviously disparities of people of color and resources being put in those directions, it makes it acceptable in some way, shape, or form. We know that abusers have targeted reservations because they know they can't be prosecuted in certain ways. We know these things, and we want to make that different. And the fact that the City of Portland is making an effort to put something forth to do that is an amazing opportunity, and I thank you for that. I think that will help me actually to push legislation to move in that direction as well. So again, thank you so much for this proclamation.
Thank you, Representative. It's always good to see you.
Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners, again, I want to offer my thanks for being supportive of this proclamation and for your staff that has been immensely supportive in bringing this forward so quickly. This was just a conversation a little over a week ago. The word got out to the community, and the community was very happy to hear that the City of Portland wanted to make this effort. And many of our community members are here in the room. Again, this was a short notice activity. We wanted to get this on the calendar so that we can provide time to put together a series of events that will happen within the city that first week of May. I do have to say that in the 4 months that I've been in the position as tribal liaison in government relations, I have had calls about 3 women, 2 of which are from many states away and whose families and friends believe that they may be here. So this is a very pressing issue, and we hope to bring forth additional speakers and opportunities to raise awareness over the next month, and in particular that week before May 5th. I want to also acknowledge Anna Marie from Chair Kafori's office from Multnomah County. She is a staffer in that office and reached out and said that she was very excited to hear that we were doing this and wanted to be here today, and has offered to help in planning those events, and sounds like there's an opportunity to partner in the future.
Fantastic.
We also have some singers here today, and they're going to sing in honor of murdered and missing women. I don't know if you want to have that happen now or if you'd like to have that after comments or remarks from.
Why don't we read the proclamation first, and then we'll hear the singers, and then I'm sure people will have some comments that they'd like to make. Whereas the City of Portland stands with other tribal, regional, state, and national governments and organizations in support of National Day of Awareness for missing and murdered Native women and girls, and whereas the lasting effects of colonization and a history of oppressive policies directly correlates to the rise of violence against Native women and girls, which is in direct conflict with tribal cultural values. And whereas the disappearances and murders of Native women and girls is often directly connected to domestic violence, sexual assault, or trafficking, which is a direct threat to tribal sovereignty and compromises Indian countries' ability to heal from historical trauma. And whereas American Indian and Alaska Native women are 2.5 times as likely to experience violent crimes, and at least 2 times more likely to experience rape or sexual assault crimes compared to all other races, according to a 2013 National Congress of American Indian Policy Research Center report. And whereas the Portland City Council, in an effort to support the visibility of this issue nationally, calls upon our congressional delegation to support pending resolutions to designate May 5th, 2018 as the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Native Women and Girls. And now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim May 5th, 2018 to be Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Native Women and Girls in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this day.
And Mayor, is it your intention to... Is it your intention to have all the council sign a letter to our congressional delegation?
That would be great. And Laura will help coordinate that for all the offices. Thank you for doing that.
I just wanted to mention you down in the little area downstairs. What is it called?
Atrium.
The atrium. There are silent witnesses down there who are wearing these red shawls. The red shawls has actually become a symbol throughout the country for Indigenous women to identify around sexual assault, domestic violence, and those missing and murdered women. So those silent witnesses that tell the story of people who have died from domestic violence or you know, those other mostly domestic violence and then trafficking. This is a symbol of them, and they're down there. I would encourage you to go down and take a look at them and just recognize that this is why most of these ladies around here are wearing red today. It's in honor of those women who've died from this.
Thank you, Representative. And we have some people to do an honorary song.
We have 3 singers here today to sing an honor song for our occasion. We have Tootsie Shields. That's her nickname. I only know her by her nickname. Linda Looking, who is like an auntie to me. I've grown up with her. She's an auntie to a lot of women in the city. And we have Talia Reesner, who is here as well. The protocol for an honor song is that people stand.
Very
so
good.
I'd like to ask everyone to stand, please.
Missing women. Plechiapo Makasitomi O te kirkelo Heo Makasitomi O te kirkelo Heo.
Thank you, that was powerful. Colleagues, any comments before we ask for a photo? Commissioner Fish?
Well, first,
oh, I'm sorry, did you have?
Just some closing comments.
Please, yeah.
This is just a first effort, and I have been listening to community members, and we'll begin to put together some potential actions that the City of Portland can take to help address this issue. So again, I just want to thank you. And thank
you.
everyone that was able to make it here today.
Thank you. Commissioner Fish?
Mayor, I just want to thank you and our distinguished panel for shining a light on this issue. I think there were some things that I think we all learned in the course of preparing this proclamation that we may not have known. And the fact that the data is not being tracked is of particular concern, and the fact that Washington State is ahead of us in addressing this is. So thank you very much for performing a great public service in shining a light. This, Mayor, is a distinguished panel, and we recognize and honor all three of our guests. I'd be remiss, though, if I didn't just say one quick word about our new tribal liaison, because I made a note when she said she's only been on the job for 4 months. The community has been advocating for this position for years. And it was not, you know, there were some bumps in the road, but I know we now have the right person.
Yes.
And I know that because she meets with all of us to talk about our bureaus, her work, what she's hearing from the community. So in front of all of our honored guests, I just want to say to Laura John, thank you so much for your service. You are a wonderful addition to this City Hall team, and we are honored to work with you.
Thank you.
I too.
Yes.
Well, I just want to echo what Commissioner Fish just said, that by bringing this proclamation forward, you have increased the awareness, certainly of this member of the City Council, about an issue that I frankly knew little about and still do. And as somebody who has you know, spent a lot of my career working on issues around domestic violence and children and families, this is eye-opening. So thank you for doing this, and best of luck with the U.S. Congress on May 5th.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks to Janine Gates and my staff for working with Laura John and the other city employees who really want to help on these issues. Sometimes when we do proclamations, it's just that. It's a proclamation. Everybody comes, goes. That's it. I'm really happy to hear that there are next steps and that we are going to do more. And thank you for your leadership in this area. When I think back to 2011, when we first passed the Tribal Sovereignty Recognition resolution here at Council, which two of my colleagues were here for, it has, as Commissioner Fish, been a long road, and yet it's been an even longer road for your peoples and for the time that you have been here. So thank you for still being willing to work with us and to looking to us to be your partners. I feel honored and humbled that you are willing to do that. Thank you, Laura, for your partnership.
Very good. Thank you all. It's our tradition after a reading of a proclamation to take a photograph up front with the proclamation, and I'd certainly love it if our three distinguished guests could come up, but we'd also invite others in the room who'd like to participate in a group photo. We'd be delighted to see you. I see some kids here. Maybe they want to come up and be in the photograph too. We'll just meet right here in front of the rostrum. Yeah, right.
Everyone that's here from the community, please come and join us for the picture.
Hey, youngsters, if we have some young people here, let's put them in the first row here.
We're going to just squeeze in. Some folks can sit on this chair too. We can have some folks sit up here too.
Laura, make sure you're in the picture.
I will be. We can fit some folks here. Have a seat. Yeah.
We can fill the front too, so feel free to have a seat.
I'm in denial. Join the club. You're old enough now? Okay. Yeah. Okay. If you can't see the camera, then you're not in the photo. Okay? Alrighty. You can come in right here, and then you can stand in right here, that spot. I want to get everyone. Can I have you right here? And then if you can grab a seat right here. So I can't see you.
Just lay in the front.
All right. Everyone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to turn on the flash. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I think we got it.
Okay. Can you wait?
Oh, Julie.
Okay, funny face, ready? Go, funny face.
Immigrants. Okay, we're good.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, how did I miss that? He's out there screaming his head up. While you're out there, he's screaming his head up. That was awesome.
That girl that's missing, she's just like, stuff like that. That stuff was on.
Yeah, and then down there.
Okay.
Let's go. Can I see our stuff?
Oh, okay.
They've got more.
I might just take over the room.
All right, folks. Folks, I apologize. We need to keep the meeting moving. Thanks, Laura. Carla, could you please read item 305?
Yes. Amend contract with Housing Development Center for housing projects by $68,419 for a total value of $162,419 to support the Southwest Corridor Affordable Housing Opportunity Sites Development Feasibility Analysis.
Colleagues, in 2016, the City Council directed the Bureau of Planning Sustainability and the Portland Housing Bureau to develop an equitable housing strategy to address potential displacement and housing choices in anticipation of a proposed light rail line along the Southwest Corridor. Significant planning and community outreach has been done, and a draft equitable housing strategy is now available online at portlandoregon.gov/BPS/76328. I don't expect anybody to remember that, but it's on the city website, which is being supplemented with a feasibility analysis of potential sites. The Housing Development Center has a successful history of providing a variety of technical assistance to affordable housing developers and owners, and it's already under contract with the Portland Housing Bureau to perform this exact kind of work. HDC has both the expertise and the capacity to perform needs assessments and financial analysis. Here to answer questions are Housing Portfolio Finance Coordinator Jill Chen and BPS Management Analyst Ryan Curran. Come on up. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome, and thank you for being here. And if you could just reintroduce yourselves for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Jill Chen, Portland Housing Bureau.
Ryan Curran, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Very good. Colleagues, any further questions?
So you're actually looking at real physical locations for potential housing, affordable housing in the Southwest Corridor?
These are potential sites, prototypes.
You say prototypes?
Yeah. Potential sites, up to 8 potential sites.
Okay.
Commissioner Fritz?
I just wanted to thank you for the community outreach. I see you were at my beloved Markham Elementary School and had over 100 people there representing communities of color and low-income folks, and it's really impressive that you chose to have it at the Title I school in the area, so thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then I'll take the opportunity to announce that our community partners are hosting another event at Markham on May 13th in the evening, and there will be some invitations to you all.
What time?
I believe it's 4 to 7 p.m.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Very good. Any further questions, colleagues? Is there any public testimony on this item, Carla?
One person signed up.
Very good.
Shedrick J. Wilkins.
Come on up, sir. You can just stay there if you want, and if there's a response needed.
Yeah, I'm Cedric J. Wilkins. I want to tie this conversation with another one. I believe this area in Southwest Portland is very upbeat. It's, part of the, my son, he got a job as a janitor at Washington Square. This area is full of Nike people fly in here and businessmen talk to Nike or Intel or something. If this area suffers in the future, it does mean we're headed into a bad situation economically. If there's a lot of unemployment in Southwest Portland, Beaverton, Hillsborough, we're in big trouble. And that means, the Titanic's hit the water line, and it's time to get the lifeboats out.
Thank you, sir. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, a recent study that was done at Portland State University showed that there's a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing along the Southwest Corridor. And certainly in the Markham Elementary neighborhood, there are a lot of families who need this planning. There are also a lot of opportunity sites where there are some undesirable businesses, which I hope you're looking at very carefully. Aye.
Fish.
I'm very pleased to support this, and I just have a word of caution. We've been talking about a Southwest Corridor transportation plan for a while, which means that real estate investors have gone in and bought and sold the land many times over as we're still developing a strategy. What we learned in Interstate and some other projects is that it is very important that transportation, housing, and TriMet work closely. And in some instances, we had to think about linking our investment with agreements by TriMet and other partners to help us. So This is not going to be easy to achieve because of the speculation that's already going on with available land in that area. So I hope you're working very closely with PBOT and TriMet, and the council at some point may have to take up the issue of whether we link some of our investment with commitments from our other partners to help us deliver the housing. So thank you. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you for your hard work on that. Item 306, if you could read that, it's a second reading.
Amend contract with Berger Abram, Inc. for the Tryon Creek at Boone's Ferry Culvert Replacement Project, number E08682, in the amount of $316,298.
Colleagues, this has already been read the first time. We've heard a presentation and public testimony. Are there any further questions?
I have
Commissioner
a question
Fish.
for Commissioner Fritz, given your long history with Tryon Creek. Is there a precedent for naming bridges of this kind?
I would have to think about that, Commissioner.
I'm not proposing it at this point, but given the enormous amount of community activism around this project, I'd like to pick your brain at some point about whether there's a naming opportunity.
Well, it might be challenging to pick the one person.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm flattered, but I decline.
Actually, Mayor, I believe our rules require that the person be deceased for 3 years.
I'm working on it. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Well, thanks, Commissioner Fish, for that thought. And this is a project that many people have worked on for 25 years. So thank you to former Parks employee Jim Shilin, to Amin Wahab, to Dawn Uchiyama, to Terry Prigg-Grigsby, most of whom testified last time. They have worked on this, and it really shows the dedication of both volunteers and city staff that people don't give up. And we often hear complaints about it just takes so long to do stuff. Well, yeah, sometimes it does take a long time to do stuff. And this one has, and it needs doing. And I'm very glad, Commissioner Fish, that you're bringing it home. Thank you. Aye.
Fish?
Well, Commissioner Fritz, you've mentioned all the heroes who brought us here, so I'll just say amen. And also, just to put this in context, this is one of a number of projects that the Bureau of Environmental Services is investing in, which over the long term will help also bring salmon back to our community. So it's very exciting. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yeah, this is a very exciting capital improvement, and it's very fish-friendly, and I appreciate the Bureau of Environmental Services' great presentation they gave on this last week, and they're thinking to do more than just a fish-friendly culvert, but to actually build a new bridge. That seems like a great solution. Aye.
Wheeler?
This seems very anticlimactic after the presentation that we heard last week. I thought it was a fantastic vision, and I would not have understood the complexity of that project without the thorough presentation last week. I thought it was really fantastic, and this is something that the whole City Council and the community can be proud of. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. We have another second reading, 307.
Authorize the Portland Water Bureau to purchase property at 40730 Southeast Latigo Lane, Sandy, Oregon, for $425,000 to protect easements for conduits from the Bull Run water supply and authorize portion of the property for disposition.
Colleagues, this is a second reading as well. Any further discussion? Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz?
Commissioner Fish, again, I'm glad that you're able to do this all in one package, making it very clear that this is going to be sold again as soon as the easement project problem has been taken care of. Congratulations. Aye.
Fish?
Thank you. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. We had two items pulled from the consent agenda. The first was item number 300.
Pay lawsuit of JBJ Holdings II LLC in the sum of $80,000 involving the Bureau of Environmental Services.
So, colleagues, I had some notes for this. Here it is. This is a lawsuit that arose out of a sewer backup on December 23rd, 2015. Right there, I can't imagine a worse scenario. A sewer backup on December 23rd, 2015 at a commercial building owned by JBJ Holdings II LLC located at 3200 Northwest Yeon Avenue. The lawsuit alleges that the city was negligent for failing to maintain or inspect the main and lateral sewer lines serving JBJ's building, and the city knew or should have known of the potential for the sewer backup. It was determined that the primary cause of the backup was likely grease released into the sewer system by nearby business Oregon Oils Incorporated. The city added Oregon Oils Incorporated to the lawsuit. Oregon Oils also argued that the city should have taken action after inspecting the sewer main in June 2015 and noting the grease was present. Ultimately, two parties agreed to share in the settlement of this lawsuit. Approval of this ordinance will allow RiskPay JBJ Holdings II LLC for the cleanup costs, the repairs to the building, and lost rent. The city is contributing $80,000 to the settlement, and Oregon Oils is contributing $145,000 to the settlement. Public testimony.
Joe Walsh pulled this.
Mr. Walsh.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We continue to object to these types of items going under consent agenda. And we would suggest that maybe you could take it under consideration that we would have either a minimum or a maximum amount of money that automatically causes some discussion. So you have $80,000 here. You have a kind of a generic introduction. People wouldn't know what was going on with this $80,000 of their tax money. So if you set up something like $50,000, we will not put it in consent agenda. Because my understanding reading the charter is that consent agenda should be routine things. You know, you can use the example of paying our electric bill. You know, that's routine. Paying an $80,000 suit and settling it, and the people that are watching this or the people that are in the audience don't have a clue of what you're doing with the $80,000. So our suggestion is do a minimum. Say if it's over $50,000, we will have a discussion and put it under regular business. That's our suggestion. We will continue monitoring these. We will continue objecting. We've only been doing it for 10 years, so we know you guys are on your way to change. You have a right to spend the money. We have a right to say, what are you doing with it? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Item 302 is also pulled.
Authorize a grant agreement with Portland State University Institute on Aging in an amount not to exceed $99,991 for support of the Age-Friendly Portland Initiative.
Colleagues, the Age-Friendly Portland Initiative is a city-university community partnership that began in 2006 as a result of a World Health Organization research project in 33 cities across the world. In 2010, the city, in collaboration with PSU's Institute on Aging, joined the World Health Organization's global network of age-friendly city and communities in an attempt to further Portland's age-friendliness. In 2013, the City of Portland City Council passed a resolution accepting the action plan for an age-friendly Portland, which contained 10 domains or areas of focus. Guiding the implementation of the action plan is the Age-Friendly Portland Advisory Council, now called the Age-Friendly Advisory Council of Portland and Multnomah County, which is coordinated by Portland State University's Institute on Aging. PSU IOA currently serves as the coordinator of the Age-Friendly Portland and Multnomah County Initiative, convener of the Age-Friendly Advisory Council of Portland and Multnomah County and its committees, and is an active collaborator in shaping our communities to become more friendly. That is healthy and livable for people of all ages and all abilities. The age-friendly Portland efforts, as well as those in Multnomah County, are viewed nationally and internationally as models for other communities. The preservation and improvement of older adults' physical, social, and emotional health and well-being has been at the core of the initiative's community-based work. This is reflected not only in the recently established Health Services Prevention and Equity Committee, but also in the Advisory Council's holistic conception of health and well-being as important aspects and outcomes of all 10 domains of age friendliness. They include housing, transportation, outdoor spaces and buildings, employment in the economy, civic participation and volunteering, social participation, respect and social inclusion, health services, community services, and communication and information. Various partners from the health and community service sectors have enriched the initiative with their invaluable expertise and long-standing commitment to this project. Public testimony, please.
Lightning pulled this.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Justice Watchdog. One of the reasons why I pulled this, I was hoping that PSU would also be here to have a discussion on this, is that I felt it was a very important issue to actually put on the regular agenda. And one of the things that I really like to look at is, I mean, when we're talking about aging, is that a lot of us in this room are up in front of me right now are 50s, 60s. And the reality is that we all want to have longevity of life. And when you start to get older, you start to really appreciate that time, and you start to appreciate different solutions and ideas that are put out in front of you. And one of the reasons why I bring this up is that, as you know, at Multnomah County, Commissioner Smith will be stepping down, and we have somebody running for her position, Mr. Bruce Broussard. If he wins to step into her position, he'll turn 80 years old when he does that. And it's just amazing to see somebody out there trying to become a commissioner, be involved in the community, Multnomah County, present their ideas, and he's 80 years old. And he's doing great. He's very healthy. He's focusing on this. He wants to win. And he even said to me, he said, you know, at 80 years old, this is really kind of my last time to really try to become a commissioner. And when you hear that and understand how important it is to live healthy, stay within the community, try to do things, and you look at someone like Mr. Broussard and understand, we've come a long way. We've come a long way when somebody close to 80 years old would say, I want to step in and become a commissioner. I want to represent Multnomah County. I want to represent the people. I want to see what I can do at 80 years old. And that's impressive. That's something to look up to and understand that there are no limits anymore. Set your mind to it. Begin to understand there's a lot of positive things going on in the Portland communities. And begin to understand that longevity and living longer is possible. And we have people even from Google, Larry Page, as you know, he started Calico, and he's studying this to add more years to your life, to live better. And he's doing it more on an intensive type program and analysis through researchers. And they're very serious about this because, you know, it doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you have. When you start to get older, you start to appreciate that extra time and the longevity and living healthier. And this is what this is about. So I was hoping PSU would be here to have a little discussion on this because in my opinion, this is one of the most important issues out there for all of us. And all you commissioners may think that you're going to live forever, but guess what? Unless we find and we live healthier and better, you probably won't, and I'm sorry to say that. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
And Lightning, thank you, and I will actually say I'm delighted this got pulled so that we could talk about it a little more.
Right.
I did neglect to mention that PSU gave a very good presentation on this during the budget process. This was discussed publicly, and we took testimony on it during the budget process. The reason it's on the consent agenda is we're actually appropriating the dollars that were allocated during the budget process. So we have to do sort of a two-step process.
Just if I may add, my point is that we have a lot of advances now to live longer and healthier. And it's such an important issue that it really needs to be focused on for everybody in this city to live healthier and longer. And it's not something, some people take it for granted. And I was dealing with a surgeon once, and he was in his 80s. And he looked at it from a different perspective and said, you know, I really want to live a lot longer than in my 80s. So let's face the reality and understand there are things happening that can extend the longevity of life. And it's so important now to look at these programs and understand that people have that ability now, and just keep trying to do positive things and live healthy. And such as Mr. Broussard, it's amazing at 80 years old to want to become a commissioner and really want to jump out there and do those things. Thank you.
Yeah, good comments. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. I'm here solely as someone who hasn't made it to 80 yet, but is getting very close. And also to support Mr. Lightning in his position, Individuals for Justice this morning in the discussion fully support what he's saying. This should not have been in consent agenda. You know our position on that. We don't particularly like consent agenda at all, but we don't like the feeling that people just are not bothering to deal with the issues. Now, there's good arguments that by the time the stuff gets to us here, it's gone through all kinds of staff reviews and committee reviews and stuff like that. And I understand that, and I accept that. However, this is the vote. This is where you vote. This is where you authorize all the work that's been done. And we know that we often come up against that. For you to agree with us would be to go against your staff. And we know that. We're just going on the record, all right, that we don't like consent agenda unless it's mundane, non-controversial, paying the lights again, that kind of stuff. When you start putting stuff under consent agenda that you just don't want to talk about, you're going to get nailed. And that's what we do. We sit here and we say, no, we're going to make you talk about this. Either acknowledge good people, acknowledge good programs, or explain why you want to spend this money. And someday we'll get it. You know, the other day I was listening to MSNBC, and the announcement came across that Trump now wants to pay for the wall by the Department of Defense. And the way he's doing it is he's saying it's a security issue. It's a national security issue. So of course the Department of Defense is going to pay for it. You know who I thought of? You. As soon as I heard that, I said, that's what they do. They move money all around. Nobody knows where it's going. And you will try to explain it to those of us that aren't on the committees, aren't privileged to what you are. You won't do it. That's why you keep getting Fs all the time when people grade you. Just won't do it. I don't know why. Seems simple to me. This is what we're doing with the money, folks.
Thank you.
If we do it once, we're going to cut it off and put it on consent agenda. No more discussion.
Thank you, sir. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor, for explaining that this discussion was had during the budget forums. It just goes to show that actually the important discussions happen at the budget forums. The first of them this year is April 3rd, 6:30 to 8:30 at David Douglas High School, 1500 Southeast 130th. The second is April 17th from 6:30 to 8:30 at Roosevelt High School, 6941 North Central. So that's when it really does matter. It makes a huge difference. People showed up last year to talk about this very initiative, and it wasn't initially in the budget, if I recall correctly, and now it is. And so we are moving forward with the grant. And I think we need to find ways to expedite doing this, because otherwise it does give the impression that the decision has, there's still some kind of discretion. What we're doing here is saying, yes, the grant is doing what we said it should do, and it certainly does. Thank you for bringing it forward, Mayor. Aye.
Fish.
So I seem to recall it was Jay Bloom who first sat down and shared a vision for what Portland could become. And I think it's the first time I heard this expression about a city that's welcoming and accessible to people of all ages and abilities. And it is, in fact, the vision that we have for this city. And older adults are a very important part of that vision, and so is our hope that older adults with all the social capital and experience they bring choose to live in our city. We make 2 investments every year that I'm aware of to further that agenda. One is through Age Friendly Portland, and we make a modest contribution to their work, which is funded from a variety of sources. And we also support the work of Elders in Action at the county. And combined, they serve as advocates for older adults in our community. I wish we could give more money to the cause. I think we underfund this part of our agenda. But we do have a coalition that's doing great work, and I'm proud today that we're recognizing that with this grant to Age Friendly Portland. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Wheeler?
So I just want, first of all, I want to respect what the public testimony was, because I think it is easy to misconstrue this process and not understand. I mean, if you're looking at this and you're thinking this was the whole discussion, this was the whole presentation, these guys aren't taking testimony, there's no formal presentation, PSU is in the room, why the heck are they allocating money? That seems like a bit of a flim-flam process. The reality is this is the end of a multi-stage process that already included public presentations, already included a presentation by Portland State, already included public testimony, already included a public vote around the budget, and this is merely allocating the dollars outside the door, outside. I mean, this is the formal process for doing that. So I want people to be crystal clear that this issue has been very thoroughly publicly discussed, debated, vetted, presented, et cetera, before we take this final vote. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned.